Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Drew. If you're your first time here, big welcome. And in this channel, we are discussing learning about sharing functional anatomy. So what the hell does functional anatomy mean? Well, function has been like a role. What does something do? And anatomy. So what do the muscles or the bones or the joints do in movement, particularly? I'm an exercise physiologist, Chinese medicine practitioner, acupuncturist, and I've been practicing, teaching, coaching, working clients through nearly 20 years now, all in kind of functional rehabilitation. So when someone's injured or got an illness or they're unwell, and we can use exercise as a means to help them recover. So that's my job and my role. And I come in, I help people, guide them through exercise programs to recover from injury, illness. And to do that, you do need a pretty good understanding of functional anatomy. And to do functional anatomy, you need to have a good understanding of the musculoskeletal system. So that's the bones, the muscles that attach to the bones, and then when the muscles contract, they move the bones, and that creates movement. Okay, and that happens at the joints. So muscles, bones, and joints. If you have a fairly good appreciation of their role individually, and then you can kind of like zoom out and put them into specific movement patterns because the human body is very patterned. We learn things in certain sequences. Then you can identify and train people really quickly when you know what to look for. But that all starts with understanding anatomy. And in this video, we're going to look at one of my favorite muscles, the trapezius muscle. It's a huge muscle group on the posterior part of the upper back. And typically we divide our trapezius into three sections. So we have a upper trapezius section, a medial trapezius section, or a lower trapezius section. And we typically just call them traps, upper traps, middle traps, and lower traps. Now, the reason why they're divided into different sections is they're all one muscle, but this is a really good example of understanding fiber direction. So if you look at the lines of these muscles here, this is the arrangement of the fibers. So when a muscle contracts, okay, the individual muscle fibers are connected through what's called a little cross bridging, like a little ratchet system. And so when a muscle contracts, they pull across each other like that. Okay. Like that. And when your muscle relaxes, it just kind of ratchets back into that resting position. So they're going to pull in a line in the direction that the muscle fibers are arranged. So this arrangement is really important because it kind of tells you where the line of movement is going to occur from. Okay, and this is how you can divide your traps into upper trap exercises, middle trap exercises, and lower trap exercise. Because to target the lower traps, the angle of the movement is going to be different to when you target the upper traps, unless you're doing a pure horizontal row. And we'll get into that in more detail. So understanding kind of the line of the muscles and where they attach to the body really is really helpful because then you can visualize what angles you need to put your body in to kind of optimize or isolate or recruit more or activate specific areas in the body. So let's go through our origin insertion first. It's always a great place to say. So origin is where the muscles are attaching on the skeletal system, typically more proximal to the midline. So the midline is going to be basically the spine. And then distal insertion or origin and then attachments are usually where the muscles attach onto the bones. So let's have a look at our upper trapezius first. So the upper trapezius really attaches on the base of your skull in this kind of region through here. So this region of the skull, the back of the head is called the occipital bone. So in this green bone here. And this kind of region through here, okay, where we've got like this kind of rough part, this is where the muscle attaches. So whenever you get a bone and there's kind of like this rough area on a bone, typically that gives something where the muscles are going to attach onto. So this is the posterior occipital region here. And so basically that whole region of the back of the head where it kind of drops off over, that's where it attaches onto there. Okay, so then it's going to attach via this nuchal ligament, so this green ligament, look how big this thing is here, which attaches onto the base of the skull on occipital there, and attaches onto all your spinous processes of each individual vertebrae from 7 to to 1 to 7. So you've got this really big, thick, cartilaginous ligament, really super strong, called the nuchal ligament. Attaches onto the occipital bone there at the back of the head. And so the actual upper trapezius attaches onto this ligament, which then attaches onto your neck, your cervical spine. That nuchal ligament then continues on to become the interspinous ligament. And that interspinous ligament goes all the way down the spine. So you've got the thoracic region, and then you have the lumbar region there as well. So really thick. Look how thick these are here, coming down through and supporting your body, your spine, with these thick ligamentous structures. And we often forget that we have these big ligaments that go right down the body on either side of the spine. From the occipital region here, then the trapezius comes out basically onto your shoulder blade and your collarbone. So we have fibers that attach onto your collarbone, about the distal third of the collarbone. Here we have the AC joint, so acromioclavicular joint. So this bone here, this part here is called the acromion process. So acromion, this is the clavicle, so acromioclavicular joint. So we're attaching onto the shoulder blade itself. Okay. And it follows the line of the spine of the scapula. So the spine of the scapula is this part here in the shoulder blade itself, the spine of the scapula. So your upper trapezius kind of attaches onto the acromion process, goes out along the spine of the scapula, and then it's going to dip off here and then go down into the angle into the lower traps and middle traps here. So this kind of really, this top part here is going to be the upper trapezius. Then the middle traps is going to be the same kind of deal, but we've got now this middle part of the back. So the middle traps, if we look at the vertebrae, so you've got vertebrae here, that's the 7 cervical vertebrae. So you might have some attachments on the tip of the spinous process, the 7 vertical vertebrae. Then we go T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, T6. That was T6 there, right? Yeah, T6 there. So this kind of region, it's going to be different on everybody. So it might be T4, T5, it might be T6 on some folks. It just depends on their muscle fiber arrangement. But generally that kind of the most horizontal line trapezius is going to be the middle traps. And that's going to line up with basically your shoulder blade, acromion process straight across, but on the back. Okay. And then we have the very important lower trapezius, which kind of goes more to the inferior angle of the spinous scapula here. As it comes into the medial side there, it kind of starts to dip down. And then it's going to come out into the spine again. So we've got there about T5, T6, and it goes right down to T12. So that's kind of interesting little kind of side note there is the traps go down to T12. So basically where the ribs start here, that's the 12th rib. T12 holds the 12th rib. And so at the line of the ribs at the bottom, that's where your trapezius is going to go. So absolutely huge muscle. Okay. From base of the skull, comes out to the shoulder blade, the scapula, acromion process along the spinal scap. Okay, then threads down to T12 and attaches structurally to every vertebrae via the nuchal ligament or the interspinous ligaments. Okay, cool. Now I've also here just got our little rhomboid, which we did in the last video, just sits underneath. So if I just kind of fade out the trapezius, you'll see the rhomboid sits underneath there as well. Now the rhomboids work together, particularly with the middle trap, because they're in this kind of middle region here. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind when we start talking about the action of the middle trap to adduct. They cannot do that without the action of the rhomboid working together. So they co-contract, or they're a little team. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So let me bring back in my traps. Okay, so we know where it sits on the body. Now we look at the actions of the muscles. So when the muscle contracts, what does it do to the body? So upper traps is really interesting. We've got a couple of different things that's going to happen here. So if the shoulders are fixed, so if you put your shoulders down and the muscle contracts, it's going to pull your head to the side. So you're going to get side bending of the head or lateral flexion. And also because you've got these angles coming down here in this diagonal line, it can do lateral flexion and it can kind of get this rotation of the head, upward rotation, because this part here is going to pull down this direction. So your chin's going to lift up the other way. So this upper trap here is going to be on really tight, really tight. Okay. Now, if the head is kind of fixed firm and then the upper traps contract, it creates essentially what your shrugging movement. So the shoulders up towards your ears type situation. So that's the shrug. So you got two key movements that the upper traps do. So lateral flexion and the rotation of the head. Okay, so really important in turning movements. Okay, rotation, turning movements. Okay, and then we also have then shoulder elevation or shrugging or scapular elevation, because it's really attaching onto the scapula, and the scapula lifts up into elevation, and then that lifts the shoulder up. So remember, the shoulder joint is actually this joint here. The trapezius don't cross this space between the shoulder and your humerus and the scapula. Like this muscle doesn't actually cross that space. So technically, the traps don't affect the shoulder joint directly, but every arm movement you do, every shoulder movement you do, you must use your trapezius to execute the movement correctly. So your traps don't work well, then your shoulder definitely won't work well. A lot of rotator cuff issues are related to muscular imbalances or poor functional movement of the middle and the lower traps particularly, because they're so important in getting the shoulder socket in the right orientation to allow the movement of the arm. So if you don't train these bad boys, often folks have shoulder issues at some point. So that's the two key movements of the upper traps. Then the middle traps is really quite simple. It's scapular adduction. So that's where the two shoulder blades move towards the midline. So you squeeze your shoulder blades together, scapular adduction. And then the lower trapezius has a super important movement where it goes scapular depression, and going to have a slight rotation of the shoulder blade as it comes down as well. So as these muscles contract, they're kind of pulling the shoulder blade down in this movement here. So this muscle works in conjunction with your latissimus dorsi. So if I put the lats in, move me on the way for a second. Lat. This iliacus. Also, I have to be an amazing speller. Search. Oh, didn't search. There it is. Okay. Let me move me over here. On the right. Cool. Let me hide that. Let me bring us back here. So here we have the lats. Now I have done a video on the lats, except after I did the video, the PC I recorded the video on decided to die. So it's currently in the PC shop getting CPR. So hopefully I can recover that video. Otherwise I'll do it again. So, but the lower traps and the latissimus dorsi, they both work together to kind of like depress or pull down the whole shoulder mechanism, particularly the shoulder blade. So if you're doing things like chin-ups or lat pull-downs, when you're doing the overhead pulling down movements, okay, these two muscles work together. So if your lower traps are weak and your lats become dominant, that can kind of create issues because you don't get this nice even pull down of the shoulder, and you can kind of get some jamming going on in the lats, because instead of having this nice scapular depression coming down, you get a kind of like a depression movement, but the shoulder blade doesn't depress properly. So the shoulder stays elevated. So you can kind of get this kind of upper trappy shoulder lat pull down type movement versus a full kind of scapular depression, which is what we want. So just get that on the back of your mind. Stay tuned for the latissimus dorsi when I get it uploaded. Actually, we want to hide that one. So let's go to motion. I'll look at motion. Okay, love this app. As always, guys, we are on the Complete Anatomy app. I'm just showing you a small slice of what's available in the app. So I highly recommend you go and get it. It's really affordable. Single license is around about $100. If you're a movement professional, health professional, PT, massage therapist, and you like movement, you want to learn more about it. Okay, it's such a great tool. So I highly recommend you get it. Check the comments for a link to the where to find the app. It's on all the things, all the places. Let me take a little sip of my chai. So let's look at the upper trapezius and its cervical movement. So it's neck movement. So now I'm on my laptop, which is a little slower than my desktop, which was a bit of a beast. It was my gaming desktop as well. Yes, I do like to play some games. So this one, not quite as powerful as another one, but it still gets the job done. And I'm very grateful I've got a backup laptop. Okay, so let's look down. So here we have cervical extension. So this is good. I didn't mention this before, is like when both sides work together, you get this movement, which is looking up, cervical extension. Okay. Super important movement to be able to do well. That's looking up. Okay. So from full flexion here, so chin to chest is flexion. And what's going to happen here is that all these upper trap fibers are going to get stretched. Okay. So the rule when you're trying to work out how to stretch a muscle is you reverse the action of the muscle. So in this example, we have bilateral trapezius muscles working, so left and right working together, so they're co-contracting together. And so when they do that, they then create spinal extension or cervical extension. So that's more neutral. And if we keep going, we then go into a full cervical extension or looking up. Okay, and then in this position, you can see the curve of the neck. These angles are all closed down here. And the eye gaze is looking up. So really important being able to look up. So if you want to reach for something, or even if you want to like look to observe. So if you're walking somewhere, you've got to look down, you've got to be able to look side to side, also to be able to look up. Okay, it's a super important movement to do. And then here is how you stretch it. So when you're stretching your trapezius, it's really simple. You just chin to chest. So just let your chin go to chest. And then you got the weight of your head, which is about 4 or 5 kilos. And then you don't need a lot of force here because if in this position here, the weight of the head is going to basically create a nice stretch through here. You might want to bring your hands up the back of your head and then just chin your chest, bring your elbows forward, and that'll add a little bit more resistance, a bit more loading to increase the stretch through there. And if you want to employ something like a PNF or an ART technique, so PNF means proprioception neuromuscular facilitation, so PNF. Or an ART is active release technique. So all that means is that basically in the stretch position, you send a gentle contraction signal to the muscle via the nervous system, then you resist the contraction, and then you get a deeper post-relaxation after contraction. So you come down into your chin and chest, then you would have your hands at the back of your head, and you just gently push your head into your hand. That will in turn on all these neck muscles here, all these trapezius muscles. You hold that for a couple of seconds and then you fully relax and then you guide the stretch go a little deeper. So that's PNF technique. So you can employ that there. And then what's really nice, you want to then, with the neck, because you've got so many different lines, you can do different angles in the neck. So you might go chin straight down, then come back up, little turn, then kind of chin down, come back up, little turn. And you kind of work the angles of the neck stretches. Now, what you need to be careful of is any jamming sensations you're getting. So for fade or any jamming you might be getting is because you're closing down all these spaces here in the neck. These are where the big nerve bundles are coming out, cervical nerves. Okay, so as soon as you kind of go into flexion and you add a rotation or a turn, you're really basically closing down those spaces and You can compromise in some people their neck, and you can kind of get some pinching and some jamming kind of sensations coming out more as you're just compressing tissue and structures, but you also might get that pins and needles sensation, which typically means you're either occluding a vessel or that you're compressing on a nerve. And if you're getting those experiences, just kind of come out, adjust your angle, and then go nice and slowly, and you should be good to go. So it's always, whenever you're doing anything with the neck, you always want to just be a little bit more, you don't want to be fearful, but you just want to be cautious and kind of like respect the sensitive structures that are coming out of your neck, because you do not want to damage the neck, because just in my experience, when I work for people with cervical injuries, it just affects the rest of the body in a way that's hard to kind of describe. Whereas, say, if you have a lower back injury. Okay. So that's cervical extension. So that's when both sides work together. Okay. And then let's have a look at this next one. Trapezius shoulder retraction, scapular adduction. So this kind of really plays into our video when we're talking about scapular protraction and retraction, because the traps connect to the shoulder blade. They're absolutely going to have an effect on the shoulder blade. So in this position, the arms out forward, you're in a bit of protraction. And when the muscle contracts, the upper traps and the middle traps together, it's going to move this whole arm in a posterior direction into retraction or scapular retraction. You're going to watch the actual shoulder blade here. So the shoulder blade moves back, that's retraction, reach forward. If we're going to keep reaching forward, that'd be so more neutral here, but if we keep reaching forward, that'd be more protraction. So one way to stretch out, or the second way to stretch out the neck is to protract here. So when you protract and you stretch the arm forward, okay, so imagine you're in a plank position and then you press forward into the plank, okay, you're going to stretch out the middle traps and also the upper traps. It depends on the angle of the head that you put yourself in. So typically what I would do, so you can imagine you're in a plank here. Can I flip it around? What do you do that? No, not that button. Not that button. No. Oh, there we go. I'll leave it there. So you're in a plank and you just basically go into what's called a hollowed out plank. So you really keep your elbow straight, you press your hands into the floor, you get those shoulder blades to spread apart into scapular AB deduction, and then you're going to get a really nice middle trap stretch, rhomboid stretch, upper trap stretch. Okay, slight tuck of the chin. So you want to get that little bit of that flexion of the spine to stretch the upper fibers of the trapezius, and you're going to get this whole area to stretch. So you can do that in a plank position, in hollowed out plank position, or one of my favorite exercises in cow stretch. So when you're on your hands and knees and you just, as you exhale, you press your arch your back up towards the ceiling. So we've got the big lat muscle here. We've got the trapezius muscle here, and we've got the rhomboids. So these all work together to pull the shoulder blade back. So retraction here. Yeah. Now the angles are going to change depending on where you have your arm. So if you have your arm more at an elevated angle, the line's going to be coming down from top to bottom on angle in a diagonal line. So that means that you're going to get more. You want to try to follow the line of the muscles you're trying to contract. Okay, so if you kind of like more lat pull down kind of angle, you're going to get more lat lower traps, and you're going to start getting into the trapeze, into the lats here as well. Horizontal row type situation, you're going to get more middle traps because that's going to follow the line through here. Although you will get almost the whole trapezius muscle co-contract together, because it's all working together to pull the shoulder blade back evenly. And then if you want to really target your upper trapezius, you do kind of scapular elevation work where you're shrugging up. So your upright row, shoulder press, okay, pressing, any of that kind of stuff is going to use your trapezius muscle. Okay, what's next on here? Here's our lateral flexion. So this is when one side of the trapezius muscle stretches or contracts. So this is the other way you stretch your trap muscles is you contract the left side here, for example, so your left side bend or laterally flex. And then if you stay in that position, okay, the right side is going to get lengthened out or stretched out here. So this is a really interesting kind of phenomenon. So you have what we call reciprocal inhibition. So there are nerves that are connecting to the trap on the left and the right. And so when the left trapezius is contracting and the load and forces are going into the left side, and then you start generating that lateral flexion, there's a nerve loop that goes from the muscle to the spinal cord back to the opposite muscle, and it tells that muscle to relax to allow that lateral flexion to happen. So if both sides contracted, you wouldn't get one side movement. It'd be basically you just either stay in position, so nice strong brace, or you get extension of the neck. So we want this reciprocal inhibition on. So one way we address injuries and poor postures is we work out which muscles are overactive. So for example, if you had a left overactive trap, and I've had this with many clients, IT workers, anyone at a desk who does a lot of driving, if they have their monitor, probably not so much in driving, but in like an IT work, computer work, if you have your monitor like slightly to the left, because some of my clients, they have like dual monitors, either in coding or they are in administration, they need multiple monitors to work on dual monitors. Like I've got two monitors here. Okay. What they do is they kind of split the difference and have one monitor a bit more to the right, one to the left. And whichever one it is that they're working on predominantly, they tend to have a rotation to that side. Because that's your eyes will always make your head orientate to make the eye movement easy and more functional for the eyes, right? So what happens then is then you get this like one side gets overactive, it gets tight, it's contracted, and it develops a shortness, and the other side gets lengthened out. And then you get this kind of like torque or rotation in the head. And then you get all this kind of compression of all those structures in the neck, all these really sensitive structures on this side of the neck. And depending on what's getting kind of compressed or jammed up or irritated, then you might go down into the arm here. So we have what's called a brachial plexus. I'm going to bring that up. Let's see what for you guys. I can't do it in this mode. All the nerve that comes out of the neck basically come out through here underneath the trapezius and through all these scalene muscles through here and the sternocleidomastoid here. So underneath these muscles, you've got a lot of big nerves, the brachial plexus, kind of think sciatic nerve, but for the neck. And if this gets overactive and too tight, they can compress down there and you can get things like pins and needles. And I've managed to help some clients like who were on scheduled to have carpal tunnel syndrome because they're getting such bad pins and needles, but it wasn't actually coming from their forearm. It was coming from their neck was so tight because they had their monitor in the wrong position, which was creating this kind of imbalance and hyperactive muscles, and it's just getting messy. So you can then restore the muscular balance if you can identify that, and then you essentially, if you just activate this this right trap here, then neurologically it'll start to relax that muscle there. And then you address the causal factor, as in this case, the posture in the monitor. So get that in neutral position, and then you retrain a bit more strength on the right and mobilize, stretch, and get rid of all the trigger points in the left. And then the head will basically reposition itself in good alignment. And then often things just start to resolve on their own, which is super cool. This is why we learn functional anatomy, because then you can kind of figure it all out with somebody. All right, so the next one, if we go on to retraction, what do we got? Last one here. Scapular depression. Oh, that's elevation. So that's the shrug. So that's lifting the whole shoulder blade up in a shrug. This one doesn't show depression, which is a bit disappointing. What I could say about that. But essentially, depression is the opposite. So you can imagine these muscles here contracting and pulling the shoulder blade down into depression. And so we need to be able to do both. We need to shrug up. So if you're pressing something overhead, this muscle needs to lift the shoulder up. Okay. Then the shoulder rolls over, like the whole shoulder blade itself rolls over the rib cage, and then it just sits down and presses down and allows the arm to move up all the way. So what do I mean by that? So from the side, okay, so you'll shrug up, that lifts the arm up here, and now to get the humerus to kind of come over here, we need to be able to clear that space between the acromion and the actual humerus itself. Otherwise, it'll get jammed up, and that's a problem because then you're going to get the bicep tendon and the supraspinalis tendon compromised in the space there. And then, so what happens there is then you get the middle trap and lower traps and the lats start to pull down, and that rolls the shoulder blade back a little bit, and that opens up that glenoid space so then the arm can get fully overhead. If that shoulder blade doesn't roll into scapular depression, then you can't get the arm overhead properly and you're going to get jammed up. And the body has two ways of compensating for that. You'll either get more lumbar lordosis, so you'll arch your lower back. So when you arch your lower back, it changes the line of the shoulder. Okay. Or you'll try to pull your shoulder blades back, but then to do that, to get the arm overhead, you need to poke your head forward and then you get jammed up in your neck. And so neither of those scenarios are good. The best scenario is to train proper scapular depression, scapular elevation. So shoulder blade up, shoulder blade down, shoulder blade elevation, shoulder blade depression. Okay. And the best way to train this movement is to do your lat pull down technique. We get someone to teach you how to do a proper lat pull down using this part of your back. So you can do straight arm scap depression movements, or you can do depress the scaps and then come down into your chin up or to your lat pull down or your cable. I love single arm cable pulls because you get the natural rotation of the arm and allows this whole mechanism to roll properly down. Highly recommend you get this muscle trained. Anyone who's got a shoulder problem, chronic shoulder problem, I'm not going to say guaranteed, but this is often very weak. And then this muscle here, the upper trap, gets often stuck in this kind of elevated position. And then when that's elevated, then that neurologically inhibits the depression and this muscle gets weaker as well. So this kind of reciprocal inhibition can kind of create problems in our body when one muscle is overused, overactive. It doesn't allow its opposite muscle to do its job properly. Then you get muscular imbalance, which is not fun for everybody. Okay, so let me put in that brachial plexus real quick. Plexus. Oh, I don't know, such a bad typist. Go. Go. Move the other way. Brachial plexus down the right. So this is your brachial plexus. All these nerves are coming out of the cervical spine and they kind of thread between the collarbone and the ribs and the shoulder blade, the scapula there, kind of coming underneath your armpit. This is why the armpit such a sensitive area through here. So if your upper traps are really tight, these muscles can get really jammed up. It's one of the reasons why people's upper traps are always so tense and so tender, is because they're so close to these big neuromuscular bundles. So when you get these muscles functional, it takes a lot of pressure off or tension off these nerves, and then that can resolve shoulder issues, elbow issues, and wrist issues just by making sure you've got a functional upper or trapezius complex just because of that relationship. So you can imagine if the traps is on, it's a bit more elevated, and then the shoulder blade is a bit more protracted forward. When you get elevation and protraction and it's too strong, you get this kind of like dumping in. And so this region in here becomes exceptionally tight and tender. And then if we just put in a couple more muscles like the scalenes on the right. So these little scalene muscles, which we'll get to in their own video, you can see the brachial plexus nerves are threading through in between these scalene muscles. And so if these ones get super tight, as the trapezius muscles which sit on top of it get super tight, it just compresses everything. And you can literally get these nerves jammed up in here. Okay. So when you get your upper back functional and you can train your trapezius to elevate, to adduct, to depress the scapula, also to create cervical extension, cervical lateral flexion, cervical rotation. Okay. And you can train that properly in conjunction with the rhomboids and the lats. You get a really functional upper back. And then a functional upper back is the key to creating functional shoulder. So anyone who's got long-term shoulder problems, like tendon problems, rotator cuff injury issues, labral issues, those kind of things. Okay. Sure, do all your work on the actual muscles of the rotator cuff, but address this stuff. And if you address this stuff really well, often that'll relieve the tension off the tendons that are in this area, and then they can heal properly. And then you can retrain this region here by getting what's called scapulothoracic rhythm or scapulohumeral rhythm. So the movement of the scapula, the shoulder blade with the humerus, it has a rhythm or when the shoulder blade moves, the humerus moves in a ratio of 2:1, 3:1, depending on the person. So you want to get that ratio correct so you get this coordination of movement. You get that done, then people's shoulders and necks and upper backs become very functional, pain-free, which is massive. Just getting out of pain for people is a huge thing. And then you can, in terms of function, you can do your chin-ups properly, you can do push-ups correctly, you can do dips properly, you can do your row techniques correctly, you can do your bench press correctly, like all the things, all your upper body movements are all orientated around this mechanism working well. So I highly recommend you train it. If you're unsure, feel free to reach out. I do offer some online consultation. If you're open to that, drop me a PM. I'm happy to help where I can. You're always more than welcome just to drop a comment in or a question in the comments, and I'll answer as best I can by a comment medium. And if you can drop a like and a share, feed the YouTube algorithm, keep growing the channel, that'd be amazing. So we can share the knowledge. The more people understand functional anatomy, better for you. Then, if you're into business, if you're in health and wellness, whether you're a yoga teacher, Pilates instructor, physical therapist, whatever it is you're doing, we're all working with the same stuff. We all want our clients to do really well. And so let's learn and share together and use this amazing medium, which is the internet and YouTube, and take it from there. So comment, like, share, all the things. And I'll see you in the next one. We're on the upper body now. So we're probably going to be looking at maybe the rotator cuff next. So that's going to be a big video. We might have to break it down to the individual rotator cuff muscles. We'll see how we go. Okay, either way, stay tuned for it, and I'll see you in the next one.